I think music in movies, once upon a time, had the opportunity to make a good name for itself. I think it was used well once upon a time. Nowadays, it's it's overpowering, to put it lightly. I think music can be immensely powerful when used incidentally, but when it dominates the movie or the story, your audiences will feel manipulated and your audiences will emotionally recoil. They will invest less in the film. You know, when you have a big reveal in a movie, a big reveal of a grand visual scope, do you really need this big, booming music? I mean, it's like, a movie studio crouching behind your TV set saying, be happy, be sad, be afraid, okay, now be amazed. And it makes me feel babied. I don't know about you, but I feel terribly manipulated. I feel like it's trying to hold my hand through every minute of the film. It's actually, it's kind of an insult to the filmmakers and the actors when you think about it, because it suggests that their work is incapable of provoking an emotional response on its own, right? I don't understand the thinking behind having this dramatic, huge, blowy music in the film. I have read of some film directors, albeit somewhat avant-garde, but I believe they're damn correct when they say music is barbaric in any film, and I think that's absolutely true. If your film sucks, if your scene doesn't provoke a response from your viewers, music ain't going to change that. Because A, the scene obviously needs work, it doesn't need music, it needs to be rewritten, it needs to be reshot, maybe even recast, and B, shoving music down someone's throat is like forcing your child to feel a certain way. It's ridiculous. People don't work that way. Hollywood needs to stop cramming music into their movies. Make something a little more natural, a little more provocative. You know what I'm saying? A little more engaging. When you have music, not only does it destroy the spell, it creates a sense of distance between you and what's actually going on. It makes the movie feel like a theatrical play. Something staged, something forced, contrived, scripted. Hand-me-down. I really do think that, we've had enough of this big orchestral music now. I get that you've got Hans Zimmer or you've got John Williams and you want to maximize the budget you've invested into them, but let's be real, man. There's a time and place and an extent for music in a film. Often we see entirely too much. You don't need music to tell a story, man. I'm sorry, you don't. If your script sucks, if your characters suck, music ain't gonna change that, pal. In fact, if anything, it's just gonna make it worse. Music immediately turns me off a film. When I'm watching a movie and I'm liking it and then along comes this big booming music, I think to myself, oh God, no. The spell is destroyed. And you now get the sense that the director or the filmmakers are getting desperate. They're in the editing room and they're saying, it's just not quite doing it. It needs some music on the top of it. Now, why is that? Is it really because music enhances anything? Or is it just because the movie is kind of dragging its feet across the floor? One thing that interests me a lot about people these days, not so much interests me as, irritates me, is the fact that so few people are really switched on about quality. And I'm talking about quality in terms of many things. I'm talking about the difference between standard definition and high definition. Some people literally can't tell the difference, which blows my mind, even on a 55-inch screen. Some people can't tell the difference between a 32 kilobyte per second MP3 and a 320 kilobyte per second MP3. Some people are content watching a bootlegged movie taken with a video camera. And I just have to ask myself, why? How is that possible? How can you not tell good from bad? How can your tastes be so underdeveloped? How can your senses be so understimulated? And I've noticed it's different in different parts of the world. In Western Australia, everything here is very much about trades and labor. And so as a result, there's no real art community. There's no appreciation for the arts or for creativity or for quality or anything like that. I was taking photographs on the street the other day, And this bogan, this redneck, comes up to me and says, "Why are you doing that, mate?" He literally asked me, "Why are you doing that?" And my jaw drops. I don't even know what to say to this guy, because why the else would you pick up a camera and take a picture of something other than the reason you like what you see? How can someone be so switched off, I guess, to hit the question again? And it just seems to me like there's a large majority of people out there whose senses are that understimulated, and I can't help but wonder why that is. How can so many people be so numbed down? Their senses are worn down to a nub. Something has to be doing that. I think every human being has the capacity to not just appreciate, but identify, really understand quality. When someone, I had a friend once, he bought the whole Blu-ray home theater system. He bought the huge screen, the Blu-ray player. He flicks it on, he watches a Blu-ray, and he says to me, "So what's supposed to happen? What's the big deal?" And I say to him, "Well, can't you notice the mind-blowing detail? Can't you notice the huge increase in visual quality?" And he says, "No, I don't see it." I'm thinking to myself, I must be going mad, because it's like night and day, isn't it? It's like, comparing a small TV screen to a movie screen, isn't it? I guess some people just don't really have the eye, maybe. Maybe some people just don't have the ear for it. Whatever it is, it boggles my mind. It flabbergasts me. I can't get over how someone can be so switched off, especially to the point where they come up to you in public and say, "Why are you taking photos of that person, or that sunset, or that building?" He was pushing a baby in a pram. I had the right mind to turn around and say, "Well, why are you pushing a baby around with you?" People are just so conceited and so narrow-minded. I don't know. It really does confuse me. That's the other thing. I mean, Blu-ray is great and all, but how many people can actually tell the f***ing difference between standard def and high def? Really, think about that. How many people in the world actually appreciate it enough to invest in it? How many people actually, see it and go, "Wow, that's amazing. That looks so good." Now, I've seen 3D, all this 3D fad that's flying around. Yeah, the stuff in the cinemas and on the TV, and eventually, apparently, we won't be able to buy a TV set without it having 3D goggles strapped to the side. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Now, does that mean my senses are switched off? I don't think so. I went to an IMAX screening when I was just 10 years old, which had the whole 3D goggles thing. And stuff popped out at me like crazy. I was ducking things. I was trying to grab onto things. I can definitely perceive the 3D effect, or at least a 3D effect of a higher quality. But the stuff that they're pumping out of mainstream cinema today, I don't see at all. I've walked into Best Buy, I've looked through the goggles, I don't see it. I've walked into the movie cinema, I put the goggles on, I haven't seen it. I don't know what people are talking about. And the other funny thing is, a lot of those demonstrations of 3D use footage of something extremely far away. Now, I ask you, how much parallax do you actually have in a shot that's taken with a telephoto lens of a subject several yards away? Like a skier going down the mountain shot from a helicopter. How much 3D do you actually have? The answer is none, because when you look at the picture on its own, there's just one picture. The two pictures have converged into one because the subject is too far away to create a three-dimensional effect. So it just, that says to me that it's a gimmick, it's a fad. Even when those two images are far apart and the goggles bring them together, I still don't see it. So obviously, the effect isn't great enough for the developers to really give a shit. So the question is, why are people still buying it? Why are people investing it? Is it possible that people go to the cinemas and rave about it just to be part of the flock? Is that possible? Is it possible people go on their blog and say, "Wow, Avatar in 3D is so amazing," when it's not? I mean, I've seen real 3D and I've seen, mainstream 3D, and the mainstream is so undetectable. I honestly don't know what people are raving about. I can't see it. Can you see it? Am I going to bother with 3D visuals one day? Absolutely not. I'm going to keep pushing this 3D sound stuff, this binaural audio. Hell, binaural audio has been going since the 70s, but no one's, developed it into a commercial product for some reason. Even though there are millions and millions of people on YouTube out there all going nuts for this 3D audio concept, the virtual barbershop, the virtual scissors, the virtual light matching. So why have people not incorporated this into games yet? There have been some attempts, but they haven't been great. They haven't actually incorporated, real HRTF modeling. It's like, yeah, hello, 3D goggles sucks. I mean, that's the other thing with 3D goggles. It's like, it's 50% darker. As if I'm going to spend $6,000 on a super bright TV and watch it through a pair of f***ing sunglasses. Are you joking me? No, I'm sorry. Again, the industry assumes that you're an idiot. The mainstream industry assumes you're stupid. They think, these fools will gobble up anything. If they're going to gobble up Lady Gaga and some video that doesn't even mildly stand up to a Michael Jackson video, they will goggle up 3D. They will gobble up the that we're putting out. And that leads me on to the topic of mainstream music and what it is, but I think that's something for a different, podcast. So let's leave it for another day, folks. Thanks very much for joining in. Well, folks, I've just finished Infamous 2, and I have to say, that's probably one of the most enjoyable video games I've ever played. I think it was fantastic. I liked the original game, and I liked the sequel just as much, if not better. And what's interesting to me now, as I've finished this game just 4 minutes ago, is the fact that I actually enjoyed it a lot more than watching your average Hollywood movie. Like, let's say, I don't know, Avatar, for example. The characters were interesting and compelling. The plot had some originality to it. There were a lot of human elements. And you just really become engaged in it. I didn't experience any of this when I watched Avatar. I found the characters dull and uninteresting. I found the plot to be something I feel like I've seen 100 times before. But that's the other thing. Maybe it's the interactivity of a game that kind of manipulates your perception of the story. I don't know yet. I have to think about that. And that's interesting because I think I wouldn't be surprised if one day we see... At the moment, there's like a sort of a gap between games and movies. There's still a bit of a gap there. I think one day, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 20, who knows? I think one day in the future, games and movies are eventually going to be like this. They're eventually going to touch each other, and eventually they're going to converge. And I think we'll be seeing the world's first interactive movies at some point in my lifetime, in your lifetime. I think that interactivity is something very special. It's a way of engaging you. It's a way of drawing you into the story. The great thing about Infamous 2 is that with every quest you complete, you can decide to do the good thing or the evil thing. And that dictates how your character looks, what he says. And this is the same thing in games like Dragon Age Oracles or in Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2. Games are now giving you more of these choices, and at the same time, they're getting more and more cinematic, more and more oriented towards storytelling. And they're getting pretty damn good at it, I have to say. I think the storytelling in games is getting pretty good. And that's why I think that eventually we're going to see this convergence between games and movies. There's still a gap there, and I think we'll always have movies just staying as movies. But I think games are becoming more and more like movies, that it just makes you kind of wonder what's going to happen in the next few years. I wouldn't be surprised if one day a movie cinema looks like a LAN center, or, perhaps with a more comfortable atmosphere. Maybe you have beanbags and a controller instead of a computer desk and instead of a movie seat, I wouldn't be surprised if we find interactivity in mainstream cinema one day at the movie theaters. What I'm noticing is an incline in the quality of storytelling in games and a decline in the quality of storytelling in movies, at least the ones that come out of mainstream cinema anyway. They're all getting, it's funny, games are getting less and less about just shooting things and just exploding things. Movies are getting more and more about that shit. Movies seem to be paying less attention to storytelling. So there's these two different kind of opinions, these two major markets, I guess you could call them, that seem to be kind of crossing each other on the train tracks. And I think it's only a matter of time until they start mixing